Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Commerce Rewired. I'm the host with my other co-hosts. I'm Chris Parsons, and we got a really special guest today, Chris Jones. Chris, thanks for joining us this morning. I know it's early, but we're going to have a great conversation about what you're doing, what the industry looks like, and we'll start off with an intro from you. But a pleasure to have you here this morning.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I've been a listener of your other recordings and interviews, so it's nice to be on here. I don't think you've had any cannabis people on here, so I'm excited to just tell my story and talk about the business. So I've been in this industry for probably close to 10 years now. This is my second chain of retail stores. So I started one early on, sold it, and then my current business, I've had it for almost 6 years. Right now, I have 22 stores, brick and mortar. 14 in Ontario, 8 in New Brunswick. We're the largest private retailer in New Brunswick, so I'm in 2 different provinces. And the business model is focused on picking cities and towns that there weren't any stores in, so unsaturated markets, opening up the stores as fast as possible, and then picking locations that were small in square footage, obviously, to the cost of building them is cheaper, utility costs, etc. And then we have a very lean team. So I think we have about 80 employees total across all the stores. And we've been doing really well since we started. It's been not many businesses make it past 5 years, so it's
Yeah.
great to be here. And the plan is just to keep opening up stores and expanding.
Yeah, it's great to have you here, and you are right. You are the first person that we've had on the podcast that run in the cannabis industry, but we are not. We have had many that actually use the
Yeah.
products. Yeah, exactly.
And it's such a fascinating it's fascinating to me coming from a retail background, and I'd love to understand, as you were building out Cannabis Express, what truly changes in your customers' minds and on the ground when you take a product that has historically been taboo and now it's trusted? Like, what insights can you give us, and what surprised you the most in building these stores and building out your business?
So at the very beginning, obviously, any new industry, it's tough to get people that are, on the fence and not, into cannabis to actually go into the store and visit it and learn about the product. I think the shift was more to a convenience first mindset. So early on, buying cannabis was highly secretive. People weren't used to going into a store and buying it, right? So now the transactions today are more closer to like picking up a coffee or shopping at a convenience store. So I think obviously, but education is super important. So when someone does come in for the first time, we need to show them the wide assortment of products. And even today, I talk to my friends and I say, "Hey, do you use cannabis?" Most people just respond with, "No, I don't smoke." So everyone just thinks cannabis is something you smoke, right? But there's obviously a lot of other products that people don't know about. So for example, topicals. So if you have, any type of pain or anything like that, anecdotally, I've heard a lot of, good feedback from people saying those products have really helped them. Gummies, things like that to help you sleep at night. So there's a lot of other products that aren't just, smoking weed and getting high, right? And then obviously, the biggest surprise has been been a massive disconnect between consumer trust and like institutional trust. So early on, it was hard to get, bank loans, things like that. And it's obviously still difficult, but it's a little bit easier now just because people are used to the product and it's kind of everywhere. But the biggest change obviously has just been on, educating consumers and getting them to come into the store at least once and just, ask questions and just so they're aware of products outside of just smoking.
Fair.
Chris, you
And I think
mentioned, sorry, go ahead,
Go
Tara.
ahead, Johnny. I think you mentioned it for sleeping. And, I think even generationally, you must see such a variance across different generations because a lot of the seniors I've heard are leaning into gummies and different things for sleeping. So it's fascinating to me that something that was considered smoking weed is now being embraced across all the generations.
Yeah.
Chris, you mentioned brand trust. And if we talk about, liquor stores, LCBO in Ontario or, SAQ in Quebec or the others across Canada, when we talk about grocery, right, we talk about brands and we talk about they have decades of trust, right, from customers. So what signals do you rely on to build that trust with customers?
So one thing that is challenging and it's still challenging today is just getting, the same product always available, right? Like I'm sure all of us, we maybe had a drink of alcohol or something like that. And, you kind of know exactly how you're going to feel when you buy like X product because you've had it so many times and it's just manufactured the same way. So it's been challenging just, at least at the very beginning. Now it's getting better where products are kind of the same when you continue to buy them, because obviously if you grow like 100 plants, they may be a little bit different each time, even if it's from the same strain. So I think making sure that, we're bringing in products that are the same for people just so they're aware that the feeling is going to be the same. And then obviously just making sure that, the convenience and the shopping is frictionless, right? So the speed of the transaction is super important, that they can go into the store, buy something and leave. And then for us, I'm sure we've, all been to like that, the cheesecake restaurant where you open up the menu and there's like 1,000 items, right? If you've ever been to a restaurant, there's like, just so many pages and you just keep flipping and then you end up shutting it and asking, the person working what's most popular, right? So I think for us, it's just been curated simplicity. So having less than, 200 SKUs per store, just making it easier for customers where they, come in, they don't see like 1,000 items and just, don't know what to buy. Cause it just, that decision fatigue just isn't good for, increasing the basket size, getting people to buy multiple items. And then obviously just, yes, the staff are the most important part of the business, right? So, making sure they're educated, they, obviously try products if they want to, and they know, they can give honest feedback and recommendations for, what they think will help that person or what they're looking for. So it's really, you need a lot of positive interactions with each customer to really, build that trust on, where to go, where to shop. But obviously my stores are different than other people's. There's some that have thousands of items. Obviously, if you, want something different each time, then you can go there. But for us, it's been just a curated menu of products and not, going overboard.
Hmm.
Chris, on that same vein, I mean, you've had to innovate with product assortment and whatnot, but your entire retail strategy, you mentioned off the top, is a little bit different than other stores in a crowded category like this. Maybe you share with us, you're a shrewd entrepreneur, Chris. So share with us kind of your strategy and kind of like setting up your retail strategy.
Oh, it was tough at the very beginning. I remember there was some like kind of big box stores that were opening up, and I was, looking for investment at the beginning, and then everyone was like, "Oh, you're opening in Toronto or you opening in Ottawa?" They're just naming like the big cities, and they're like, "Oh, is your store going to be like 5,000 square feet?" And I was like, "No, it's going to be tiny. It's going to be in a small town." Everyone, it just wasn't attractive to anyone. They didn't like that, or maybe I just wasn't explaining it properly. But obviously, it's just funny now because I, to tell people about the business. They're like, "Oh yeah, it's so great. It makes so much sense." And I'm like, "Yeah, like I asked you 5 years ago and you thought it was kind of stupid, right?" But, I think it's just from the beginning, it's, I didn't have a lot of capital compared to everyone else, right? So I think even just not just this business, but anyone starting a business, like the best thing to do is just, manage every single dollar that comes in and out of the business and just try and open it up and start making money as fast as you can. So like the plan was open up one store and then just continually iterate, right? So store one is obviously different than store two. So just keep opening up stores and obviously improving on each one, but then at the same time, making sure that each store is similar in a sense as well. Like you don't want to, if you go to like McDonald's or something, right? You don't want to have different, things are cooked differently at each place. It needs to be the same across all. So it's been a balance of iterating, but then also once something improves, I go back to the first store and I make it better there. So yeah, managing the money, managing the cash flow, that's obviously the most important thing. And then from the start, we didn't have a significant amount of money starting this business. So I had to pick places that were, the rent is cheap, easy, really quick to open. Like I didn't use fancy custom displays or anything. Like I got my stuff from IKEA. I get my, display shelves from Costco or whatever. So I opened them up super quick, super cheap. And then obviously being in a small town, we're the only one there, right? So in Toronto, I'm sure all of you have seen, after COVID, all the coffee shops shut down and then they became cannabis stores. And then now they're, a lot of them are disappearing. So I wanted to pick places that weren't completely saturated and just weren't like sexy markets. Like I think for me, I just, you really make money having, well, for me at least, it doesn't need to be like a sexy business in Toronto in a big city. Like I'm completely fine with having something far away that, only the people in that town know about, right? So those were the most important things for us, at least at the beginning. And then they still are. Like every single dollar, I watch it where it goes.
I find it interesting on the marketing side of this because actually I've never drank in my life, never had one drink, and it took some friends to educate me on cannabis. And where I find it the best is I have no intention of getting high, but when I play golf, I'm nervous as hell on the first few holes. So just to have a gummy to settle me down, or in anything that's going to bring some level of anxiety to me, I find it as a great item to be able to just chill, settle down, get in the groove. And I don't even feel different, but clearly something happens because I become one of the best golfers ever. With marketing, can you market, or with all the limits you have on marketing, How do you go about educating people on stuff like that from a brand perspective as well as usability of the product? Like it's got to be difficult.
Yeah, no, it is difficult, and I didn't know you were a golfer. I definitely send me your address. I'm gonna send you some samples, and I'll see you on the back nine. That's when you shine, right? When everything kicks in.
Once
So
I lose all my balls, I'm a great player.
yeah,
Now we're all going to want some of these performance enhancing gummies that Chris take. No idea.
or performance decreasing guns, right? I think it depends on who you are, right? Because obviously everything affects people differently. But yeah, the marketing is tough. So for us, obviously, like I pick small towns. So when I open up in a small town, like I invite the mayor, I invite the city council, we cut a big ribbon, and then obviously we hire local people that work, that live in the town, so they can, spread the word. And then sometimes like the local newspaper comes and does an article for us. So it's extremely limiting on what we can do to the regulations, right? Like I can't run, digital ads. I can't do anything like that. So once we open up, the most important thing is just, making sure everyone in the town is aware. Getting the signs up pretty early so people can drive by and see. And then a lot of these towns only have a few thousand people, right? So once we open up, the word spreads pretty quick that we're going to be open. So it's, for us, I think it's been a benefit. I think for larger retailers that have a lot of competition, it's hard for them just to, show people why they should go to their store versus the one across the street. But luckily for us, we're the only one in town. So once we open up, it's actually pretty exciting for the town. And then usually everyone tells each other, right? So yeah, just inviting everyone, getting the local media to come, having like a, a little grand opening celebration, and then just making sure all the people we hire are local just so they can spread the word across everyone else. And I think eventually it may change. We may be able to do more things, but for us, it doesn't bother me that we're, so highly regulated that we can't really do any advertising because people come. Once we're open, they know.
Chris, when someone starts their second store, usually then they speak about, should we franchise? Are we going to go corporate owned or franchise? Did you give any thought to that? Like, did you weigh that? And is it still an option? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Oh, every day, like even at least once a week, someone calls me and asks to open up a franchise. For us, it didn't make sense because like if someone came to me and they said, "Hey, I want to open up 20 stores," then I would be interested in it. But the places that I select are small towns where the population isn't that high. So obviously I need a lot of stores to make money. So I have 22 stores. So, they would need to open up a significant amount of stores in order for it to, to really make money. So I haven't really thought too much about the franchise just because there hasn't been an offer where someone was interested in really opening up a lot of stores. But then, obviously that complicates things, right? I'd have to grow the team. I'd have to have someone in charge of, managing the franchisees. So for us, it was easier just, scaling it corporately and just opening up, one store at a time with cash flow. Like I haven't had to break, like we brought in a little bit of money at the very beginning from some close friends. And then I was funded by myself. And we have, since the beginning, we haven't needed any money just because every new store opening is funded through cash flow. So I have considered a franchise, but the thing is, for us, the margins are extremely small, right? For cannabis retail, the margins are very small. So it's tough to have both, the franchisor and the franchisee make, like be profitable just because of the fees that you have to pay. Because I do know a lot of people that had franchise stores and they just stopped paying the franchisee because they're losing money themselves. And then to pay even more money to someone else just doesn't make sense, right? So there really isn't a lot of that. There's only a few companies, and the ones that were the biggest, started at the very beginning when everyone's, idea of how much money these stores were going to make was, severely inflated. The amount of franchise stores opening up now is it's almost zero. Like I don't see that many opening up anymore.
Interesting. So your model then, opening in small communities, you engage the community. It sounds like everything that drives profitability is based on frequency and loyalty, and which is so difficult. But I think you're right in that in the larger enterprise or in the larger organizations, they're constantly fighting and the noise is heavy. When you think about your employees and even the leadership in your teams, what stands out? Like, what's the most important thing for the leaders in each of your 22 locations?
So our team is small. We do have some really, really great people. Like I would, obviously I take credit just because I do speak about the business, but everyone else is much more important than I am in the business. Like we have a manager that oversees everything, Andrea, she is fantastic. We have someone in New Brunswick named Nathan. He has been critical to our success in New Brunswick expanding. So, bringing in people that you trust completely is very important. Like I think great leaders understand that, they're not the best at everything. I'm very good at understanding what I'm not good at and just bringing in people that can, fill those gaps. So bring in, people you trust, super important. And then obviously as you open up more stores, you do get, further away from the ground just because of, that's inherent in scaling a business. So I try to get into the stores as much as possible just to get feedback. Like I have a lot of frequent calls with all the staff at all the stores just to learn what's happening on the ground. So that's really important. And then, extreme adaptability, especially in any highly regulated business, like regulations can change overnight. So you need to, be able to adapt really quickly and change. And then obviously, like I mentioned before, just, ruthless financial discipline, just being able to manage every single dollar that goes in and out of the business is super important.
Just to stay on the vein of leadership, Chris, it sounds like you have a high risk tolerance, as most entrepreneurs should have.
Yep.
But just to inspire other leaders or people that want to dip their toe into this, what was like a moment of courage in your journey early on? Like, I assume that you had some experience, as you mentioned to us, so you knew this would work, of course. But what courage did it take, Chris, and what decisions did you have to make early in that journey to get your business off the ground?
Well, I think I was lucky. I was lucky a few different times because, a lot of people start a business when, if the business fails, they'll be at zero, right? So I was working, I had a corporate job. I was, I was making pretty good money doing that. And then when I opened and sold my first chain of stores, that gave me enough of a cushion to, I thought in my head, I'm like, okay, I don't need to work for I don't need to get paid for 2 years. Like I can try this for 2 years and see if it works versus other people who, need to balance like working a full-time job versus building the business at the same time, which I did at the start, but obviously you really need to be all in on it. So being able to have some extra money just where I can build the business, but also not have to think about where my light's going to turn off. So I was lucky in that sense that had enough you know, I had enough money at the very start where I wasn't really worried. Like, obviously, I was, thinking about everything financial, but I had enough money where I didn't need to pay myself for like 2 years, right, until the business was actually making money. So that was important. And then obviously, every single day you wake up and you have to be fearless when it comes to business. Like things can change instantly. Like look what happened with COVID, right? Every retail store shut down. No one could go inside. You had to pivot to selling products online, which is very different. Like most of your staff weren't able to go in. So I did open up, like my first chain was during COVID. So that was a really good experience doing that before I sold it. But you really need to just, every single day is different and your risk tolerance is obviously very high. Like yeah, like I think that well, at the beginning there was a lot of, important moves. And then recently it was the expansion to New Brunswick. So getting into a new province. So that was one thing I haven't done before because right now, like I can, although my stores are in small towns, I can drive there. I can, if there's an emergency, I can get there. But New Brunswick is different just because it, take like over 12 hours to drive there. I'd have to fly there. So that was an important role. But then obviously, Nathan, who's in New Brunswick, was critical to our success out there. So I think you just, you obviously have to take a lot of risks, but if you can, hedge some of these things, that's the most important. But at the beginning, the toughest thing is just the finances and making sure you can balance both. So a lot of people start a business and then they still have a full-time job and then they, you keep doing it until you're making enough money where you can quit your job and do the business full time.
Well, shout out to Nathan for the stepping up out there. That's great, Nathan.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you a question, and maybe this is actually the answer is the staff in the cannabis retail industry. What have you figured out that traditional retail could take away and learn from? And maybe it is that product knowledge, the staff, the training, because obviously when you shop retail, the experience is very different than it used to be 20 years ago when you walk in a store today.
Yeah, so a few different things. Obviously, the training on products is a lot different. I think most of us, for the most part, you go into a store and the person that's working there is more just like a cashier. Like they don't really know about any of the products. Training on at least some of the products. I think, traditional retail should look at how they can learn more about, the products that they're selling in store, because then that gives them the ability to upsell, and to get, increase the basket size. So that's important. And then obviously for us, like our supply chain is a little bit different. We deal with the government. So in Ontario, we buy from the OCS, the Ontario Cannabis Store, and in New Brunswick, we buy from Cannabis New Brunswick. So the being able to pivot really quickly when products, drop off, and being able to, seamlessly swap to a new product, because obviously in this industry, companies are still going bankrupt, frequently, right? And a lot of them are growers. If a grower goes bankrupt and, their products disappear, we need to like quickly be able to pivot and find a product that is the same, that we can then, train all of our staff really quickly on it, get the product in, just so we can, keep those customers happy, because they'll come in and ask, like, where is this product? And it's gone, right? So we do need to be able to, pivot really quickly and make, fast decisions on that. And then obviously there is some, AI comes up a lot. There is some like AI component that I do use to manage inventory. I have obviously like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of transactions. So being able just to dig through data really quickly, I use AI for that. But I don't have tons of AI stuff going on right now, other than just being able to dig through transaction history really quick and just get answers very quickly. But yeah, traditional retail, there are things they could learn from us, and vice versa.
Right. I think to build off of that a little bit, I grew up in sales and I had a sales track that I was taught at store level, and it was guest, greet, understand, educate, secure, and thank. Do you just leave it organic for your team to sell, or do you have any type of an outline on how they can best sell? Because you mentioned how important building a basket is.
Yeah, it's a mix of both. So like sometimes I go into a store and people, the salesperson follows you around. You just want them to leave you alone so you can look. But so
Yeah.
I think it's a mix of, we obviously do training for all of our staff, but then each you kind of have to adapt things slightly depending on the location. Like obviously people in New Brunswick, like a lot of them are bilingual. So we have bilingual staff that, they may be greeted in French, they may be greeted in English. And then obviously depending on the city or town, the consumer preferences are a little bit different. So like we have a store in Brampton, for example, where most of our pre-rolls, like the highest amount of pre-rolls are sold over there, versus another place where it might be, we might be selling more like edibles, oils, things like that. So you have to have a training program for everyone, baseline. And then obviously it still needs to be, you need to give them the ability to cater to people locally, right? So, selling to people in each town is a little bit different. So we give the flexibility to all of our staff to do things a little bit differently depending on the town. And then, even the way we build our stores, right? Like someone comes in, they're aligned like a fast food restaurant. So you come in, we obviously have some displays on the sides with accessories in them, but you walk up to a counter, the menu is above, and then you talk to someone. So they're, the route of a customer, you kind of just go up straight to the front to ask someone questions, right? It's a mix of both. Yeah, you definitely need a training program for all the stores. And then we do rely on some of the licensed producers of the brands to also help with the training as well, because, they frequently come out with new products, new categories. And then, we need to get samples to our staff just so they can try it out so they're able to sell it. Not necessarily, you don't need to try every single product in order to sell it, but it does help if have knowledge on new products that come out, right? Because they're all so different.
Chris,
Awesome.
well, you mentioned regulation. Obviously, it's a highly regulated product. What's one regulation you would change if you had a magic wand, and why would that be?
Ooh, that's a good question. That's a good question. I think probably one of the main things I would change would just be the supply chain slightly, just because everything right now is bought, it goes from licensed producer, they sell to the province, and then we buy from the province and they're our distributor. So I think there are some changes to the supply chain where, because right now, so for example, if you have one store, if you have 100 stores, everyone pays, this is for Ontario and New Brunswick, everyone pays the exact same price for products. So I know exactly what someone's margin is in Ontario and New Brunswick because we're all paying the exact same price. So I think if you're able to buy products in bulk and save money, that would be helpful for us, because then we can obviously pass on some of those discounts to customers and be a little bit different with what we do. And then I would probably at that point introduce some of my own branded products, but right now I haven't done that. So I think the change that I would be beneficial to us, and a lot of people, would just be changes a little bit to the supply chain where we can order products directly from the producers versus it having to go to the government warehouse, because sometimes a lot of people are not buying products illegally anymore, but the supply chain for buying illegal products is sometimes a lot faster than regulated ones. Like you can grow it and then sell it in the same day after at some point after it's harvested and cured and everything. But for a product to be like packaged and sent to the government, and then we have, it's put away there, and then we order, and then it gets delivered to us. Like the longer product is, they do get stale, right? Like the freshness is one of the most important things for great cannabis products, is like getting it, it's like when you go to a bakery and it just comes right out of the oven. The freshness is so important. So quickening the timeline in order to get products on the shelf would be really, really beneficial to customers. And then obviously for us financially, just because we have so many stores, so we can order products in, significant bulk. So that would be the one change that would help us. But for the most part, the government, especially in New Brunswick, have been extremely receptive, and working with them in New Brunswick has been fantastic. I have nothing but good things to say about working with all of the people in New Brunswick. Yeah, it's great place to be.
That's fascinating. This is an industry that I don't know too much about, to be honest. And this is I'm learning as you're talking. Pricing, let's say the gas price issue now, right? Where airlines have increased their pricing, and you see it trickle down into food. How does that impact? Like, are prices volatile here from month to month? Is it stable for the whole year? How does a world event impact pricing?
Yeah, it's fairly stable. It's fairly stable for the most part, but obviously it affects us in a different way where, some of these products aren't necessarily, the most important thing for consumers to buy. So obviously if, prices go up for gas, then maybe that person has less money to spend on cannabis, on other products, right? So the supply chain hasn't really affected us too much, just because like I open up the stores really quick for super cheap. So it's, the stuff that I buy to open up the store, the prices haven't gone up too much. And then in terms of the products, like a lot of the brands, there's still so many licensed producers out there that they're all competing, right? So some of them are probably taking the hit on, buying some of their, accessories. Like for example, like if you buy like a vape pen or something like that, like the packaging cost, if it comes from Asia, and the cost for those things probably, were definitely went up. But those things haven't been passed on to us as of yet. But generally things going up in price, consumers sometimes just have less money to spend on cannabis products.
Chris, just peering through the crystal ball, or maybe crystal ball is more appropriate. You can license that product off me if you'd like.
Think about it.
What's the future? What happens next, right? So you've mentioned some category attrition, right? The landscape's changing, maybe some regulatory change, maybe the ability to communicate with customers a bit more. What do you foresee over the next couple of years?
For me, what do I foresee for me, or just generally in the industry?
In the category, yeah, and category obviously will affect you.
So I think generally in probably 5 to 10 years, there's going to be a lot of consolidation. It's already happening. Like there's already a few retailers that have several hundred stores. So I think there's going to be a significant amount of consolidation across all parts of the supply chain, like the retailers, the licensed producers, the manufacturers, all of that. So there's going to be a lot less people in the industry. So I think that will obviously help. Well, it'll help for a few things. Obviously, the supply chains will get a lot, they'll get easier. There'll be probably more changes in regulations that benefit us when it's more consolidated, because right now there's still so many like mom and pop type of businesses where they call the government to make a change. It's probably not going to happen. But if you have 20% of the stores out there and you call to lobby for some changes, you're probably going to be listened to, just because of the size of your business, the amount of taxes you pay, how many people you employ. Consolidation obviously is going to happen. That's happening across every new industry. There's a lot of consolidation. And then yeah, the regulations, I think that marketing and advertising will probably change a little bit in terms of allowing more of that in age-gated environments. So if there's a place where it's, only 18 plus, like a casino or something like that, then, there'll probably be a little bit more advertising there. And then product, like there are small regulations that will probably be changed eventually, like the amount of product that you can buy at once. Right now, there's a limit to 30 grams of like dried flower, but they're like, if you go into the LCBO or any liquor store, like you can buy an unlimited amount of alcohol, right? But for cannabis, there's only a certain amount you can buy. So I think there'll be changes to that as well eventually, just because that it just doesn't really make sense. If if you're a big consumer, you don't want to have to go to the store every couple days. It'd be better just to buy something in bulk and go home, right?
Yeah. Awesome, Chris. Thank you for doing this. I have to jump in and make sure we give so a call out to Kit and Ace, our sponsors, as well as Cattle. Both sponsors have been with us for this whole journey, and we appreciate it. Chris, we can expect to see you at E-Tail and hopefully the Commerce Rewired dinner.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm in the process of moving right now, so E-Tail might be a little bit tricky, but definitely send me some info on that dinner. It'd be great to see everyone in person and get you those edibles for the golf game.
Yeah, and I didn't even get a chance to mention the kitchen karaoke. The kitchen karaoke is like off the
God,
charts.
goodness.
Awesome.
This
Awesome.
is fascinating,
Again,
Chris.
thanks.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is
thank you.
fascinating.
Thank you. Send me the videos of the karaoke at the end. I bet Johnny looks like a good singer.
Looks, I am definitely not, though. I might look like one,
Awesome.
but I am
Thanks.
not.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you all, and we'll pick this up again, I'm sure, in maybe a few months, just to see if anything changed in the industry and keep the conversation going. Thanks so much, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.